Today's lesson, we're going to be talking about business books in particular. The thing about a business book, it's actually probably the easiest to write. So if you guys remember from a previous lesson, we essentially said there's like two kinds of nonfiction books in the business space. Because if you think of nonfiction, history is technically nonfiction, biography, autobiography, memoir, cooking books, all that kind of stuff are essentially also nonfictions. But when people say nonfiction, they usually mean self-development or business, or those are the ones that sell the most. And so if you guys remember the difference between how to and a big idea, that's essentially the first decision you have to make. So the first decision you have to make is, am I going to write a big idea book that's like Malcolm Gladwell or James Clear, like some big concept, or like leadership or whatever. Or is it going to be how to, and is it going to be really niche? So this is like a very particular travel guide. It's like a super how to thing, or how to use this particular software. Like you could have a book on how to use Notebook LM in 2025. So that's very how to. And we talked about this where the big idea book, it's more of a big swing. So it's probably going to be difficult to sell 1,000 copies because if you're writing a book about like leadership, something really big, there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of competition, right? And so we get drowned in the noise. But if you win, a lot of people have the problem of leadership. So you could sell tons and tons and tons. So it's a big swing. It's like a software startup or something, right? Whereas a how-to book is like a local cafe or a local restaurant. Right? It's pretty easy to succeed as like a local cafe. As long as you choose the right place and you're like halfway decent at business, it's like, people are addicted to coffee and it's, but you're not gonna become like, a billionaire. Does that make sense? So the kind of risk reward of business is the same fractal as the risk reward versus a big idea book, like a Malcolm Gladwell book versus a how-to book that's more niche. This is the first thing that you need to understand before you approach a business book. With AI, the answer can be both. You can say, I'm going to write a big idea book about leadership or about marketing or about some big concept that you want to write. Here's how you should think about a business book. You guys remember the question that I always say for business? What problem do you solve for, and how do you do it uniquely? You guys remember this? Uniquely. This is essentially like all business. If you're like, I don't know what my business is, this is essentially every single business in the world is some version of this. You have a problem that you solve, even if it's entertainment. It's like, I want to be entertained. That's a problem, right? Bored and I want to be entertained. You're still solving a problem. And this applies to physical products, services, software, even like energy and big macro stuff. What problem does minerals solve? It's like, oh, well, these companies need these minerals to build these products. It doesn't matter if it's B2B, business to business, B2G, business to government, B2C, business to consumer. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you have some problem that you're solving for some avatar, right? And then there's a reason that you exist. How do you do it uniquely? And a lot of the times, some people call this competitive advantage, your unique value proposition. But for a business book, what you need is this fancy term for this that's called your unique mechanism. So this is for business. This is your business books. This is what you want to call it. It's essentially a copywriting version of your unique value proposition. So do you guys remember Donald Miller building a story brand? So he says there's a person, right? There's a person with a problem. And what does their life look like? They want to get to here. This is their dream scenario. They're happy. This would make them happy. So they're happy in the situation, but right now they're sad. Okay? Your job as a business is essentially to take them from this where they are right now to there. And a lot of times what people do is they don't realize that their business is Yoda. So you're the mentor. You guys know hero's journey, right? So essentially there's the regular world. There's this me, lowly me in my regular world. And there's some inciting incident. And the inciting incident is often like, introduce the problem. And then you have a call to an adventure. And then you go to the new world. And then you meet a mentor. And then the mentor says, hey, by the way, you should use this thing. Or you should learn about this thing. You should use this, by the way, unique mechanism. And then you have a series of trials, and then the trials eventually have a climax, and you beat the bad guy. And by beating the bad guy, you usually learn something about yourself, and now you solve your problem and you're happy. So you as a business are essentially the Yoda character that's giving them, after they have their call to adventure, before they go on their journey, you are the person that says, hey, by the way, this is how you should do it, and I can help you along the path. So business, you are Yoda. This applies to the biggest businesses in the world. This applies to Apple, and this applies to your local gas station. So like, what is the problem that a gas station solves? You guys know that I'm very big into like why, right? So you have to like really understand the first principles of what we're doing here, because I'm going to be able to tell you how to outline a book in like 3 seconds. Business books are really easy to outline, but they're dependent upon your unique mechanism. So I want you guys to understand this idea. So what is the unique mechanism for your local gas station? Just think about it. So what's the problem? Let's do it one by one. What's the problem that the gas station solves? I don't have gas and I need gas. Okay. And for whom? Who's this station solving it for? If you answer this question, you're probably going to have the unique part almost built in. So their unique value proposition is close. That's their unique value. I'm close to you. That's their competitive edge, is they're near you. They're convenient. Now, think of one, like Ohio, I remember Sheets. I remember there were Sheets, and I would often go a little, I remember in high school, I would go there over some of the other gas stations, even if it was farther away. And the reason for it is because they had like essentially their own like fast food restaurant kind of built in. I know Texas has a bunch of these as well, right? Where you go in there, like truck stop, for example, their unique value proposition is sometimes they're the only one. They're close because you just need gas, but simultaneously, they're like, oh, it's a one-stop shop. You can take a shower there. You can play some video games. I can go to one of 4 restaurants like that. So they're adding to their unique value proposition by having multiple, a lot of things that you can do. So this is just one example. If you think about what problem does this is like a really funny one, but what is the problem that like a backpack solves for a kid, and the backpack is from Walmart? What is the problem that it solves? Carry stuff. What is the problem that Hermes, what is it? Hermes, those are like the $10,000 bags. What is the problem that they solve? The real problem that it solves in a fundamental way is like, oh, it's a bag. Right? So they both are things to carry something. That's like a tool. But the unique way that Louis Vuitton does it, or Coach bags, or whatever bag does it, is that it also is a status signal. So doing the same function, but the uniqueness of the other one is that it has an additional function that is signaling wealth. It's funny when people say, why are luxury goods like so expensive? It's like, that is the point of a luxury good. If it wasn't expensive, it wouldn't be a luxury good. It has nothing to do with quality. It's like the whole goal of it is to say this is expensive. So it doesn't have to make sense. It's not a logical thing, because if it wasn't expensive, then you wouldn't buy it for that point. So what you need to do when you're building a business book is you need to understand, what problem am I solving for what avatar? And then how do I do it uniquely? And because the unique mechanism is essentially a theory, or a step-by-step, or a how-to, it's education. So you're not going to actually do the service. Remember, like there's service, and then there's physical product. And then there's different kind of SaaSes, like an in-between, like apps and that kind of thing, software. This is kind of modern invention. But so you have these as like the 3 major different types of business, right? And technically, selling a physical product that acts as you're selling a physical product, which is a book or a digital product, but it's sort of acting as a service. Education is a service. So it's a physical thing, but they're not buying it for the physical thing. They're buying it for the education, and education is a service. So it's a medium for education. That's what a business book is. And so the education will do what? The education, if they implement it, if they learn the thing that you're talking about, will, if it's a business book, what is the main KPI of a business? What are like the main things that you keep track of as a business? Yeah, revenue's at the top. I'll give you a hint. Whenever you're trying to like help people solve business problems, the way that you want to think about it is through an income statement. So you have like revenue, and then at the very bottom, you have net profit, cost of goods sold. Think of this as like a copywriting thing. I'll skip to the end here. Is your business is essentially going to help them with one of these things in their income statement. So you have revenue minus COGS. Some people put marketing above, but it depends. And then you have gross profit. A lot of people will put like shipping, but like essentially whatever right? And then what do you subtract? You subtract marketing, which is like CAC, right? Cost of acquiring a customer. Some people call it the CPA. And then you have operations, and you have payroll. Does this make sense? I'm not trying to give you a business lesson, but essentially your business should attack one of these things. Your business book should attack one of these things, because this is essentially all a business cares about. A business, like at the end of the day, these are the things that they care about. So this is what an income statement is if you're a business owner. And then you subtract taxes, and then you have EBITDA. This is kind of really, really simple, basic income statement. And then there's only one other lighter thing that is the owner. So here's the deal. So what does a business owner want to do? Just zoom in on this. What does a business owner want? What do they want to do with revenue? So they want to increase revenue. What do they want to do for cost of goods sold? What do they want to do with cost of goods sold? They want to lower it. So that means that they would have higher gross profit. Now, what do they want to do with marketing? They want to decrease their marketing costs. What do they want to do with operations? They want to decrease. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is understanding how this relates to one of these factors. So just take any business book. Like, let's take a leadership book. Why would I buy a leadership book? As a business owner, what's the point? I pay $20 for this business book. Why do I care? To gain knowledge, now what? I have value, now what? Now what? How do I decide whether or not I was successful? I learned something cool. I got value, but how do we define that? I applied it. I learned from someone else's experience, but how are we defining whether or not this was successful? Because for me, I've read 500 business books, right? So I gained some knowledge. Well, I gained some knowledge. Is that valuable? I'm not retired. I'm not just doing this for fun, you know? Yeah. Okay. So I become a better leader, but now what? So if I'm a better leader, what's that going to do? What's it going to do to my business? What would that in theory do to my revenue if I'm a better leader? Yeah, but why would it increase? Like, in order to be able to write a book like this, you have to actually understand what's going on. So increased productivity. So let's just focus on what Randy said for a second. So Randy says, hey, you'd be more productive and your team would be more productive. So what that means is that we would probably, if we were more productive and we were more efficient, we would lower our operational costs. Maybe we use better software. We have better project management. I hire better people that are more efficient with their time, or even maybe have a better culture so people don't quit. Maybe people stay on for longer because of the culture and I don't have to give them as much pay raise or something like that. I don't think that's kind of unethical, but in theory, right, some people want a good culture as well. So that's obvious. But what if, for example, I'm a better leader, so I'm able to hire and inspire and train a better CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. And that marketing officer is able to decrease marketing, but also they're able to increase revenue. So don't think about this as a self-development thing. This is not like Tony Robbins thing. So imagine I'm your avatar. I'm going to read your business book and I'm going to buy it, but you want to potentially sell me more than just the book. You guys know these idea of sales, right? You have a whole suite of products and services. So you might have something that's your ebook for $9, but then you might have a $5,000 training or something like that and everything in between. Or maybe you have a service or whatever. Maybe you have a B2B contract that's going to be a year long or whatever it may be. And Jonathan, I'm a great avatar for business buyer. But I do not buy books really anymore for motivation or to learn knowledge or to get inspired or get better or these are all very vague for me. So I'm very fast to application. So I want to find something that's going to help solve a real problem that I have in the real world with my business. And the way that I'm going to measure it in my business is, does it help me increase revenue? Does it decrease my cost of goods sold? Does it make my marketing more efficient and better and also decrease my cost of acquiring a customer? Does it improve my operational efficiency? Can I do more with fewer people or leverage AI or leverage software? If any of those are true, it's going to affect the bottom line of my business. And now I'm going to see that business book as a success. Even there's very soft skills, empathy. One of my favorite books ever is Kim Scott's Radical Candor. So Kim Scott's Radical Candor is a leadership book. Kim Scott is just rock star, honestly. She was one of the leading executives for Google AdWords. And Google AdWords is, just to be clear, the most profitable product that's ever been created in the history of humanity. So Google's revenue is Google AdWords. So their revenue model, how everything is free, and that's because of Google AdWords. And she was an executive there. So she's as high level as it gets. And she wrote this book called Radical Candor. And it starts by her talking about how she's frustrated because her executives and her managers are emotional. And she's like, I wanted to be a business person. I didn't want to be a therapist. Just imagine you're paying someone. I know this is kind of an extreme example, but at Google, the executives are paid $500,000 to $1 million a year base pay. And then they also have bonus structures. So those people are getting paid. Imagine you hiring someone and that person you took out of your wallet and paid them $2,000 a day. Just imagine that. Imagine that you took $2,000 every day and gave it to them and said, hey, thanks for work today. So if you want them to be efficient, And if they're spending an hour and a half complaining about their dog or like whatever's happening with, they may have the skill to really help the company. But if they're distracted by personal things, then you just wasted a lot of money and especially if they're in a high leverage position, meaning that the decisions that they make and the things that they do have an effect on 5 or 10,000 employees underneath them. And this is an extreme example, but extremes are good for understanding the concept. Then if you have to get them out of their own head and back into work by being empathetic with them, then that's what you have to do. That's the job. Your job is essentially to get like 10 of the highest level people in the world to work efficiently because each one of them have a lot of people that are working for them. So even a book that's about leadership and empathy and like how to be a good leader when people are like having problems, or essentially, by the way, the end of the book is like you have to care about people deeply, but you also have to be really honest with them. And so that's essentially like the thesis of the book, which is a big idea book. But the reason why it's powerful is because if you do that, if you use radical candor with your employees and your team and yourself and people around you, then it's not like my life is going to be better. That's not really why people read it. They read it because they can apply it to their businesses, and then their people on their team perform better. And if their people on their team perform better, then all of these metrics in their income statement are going to improve. And then they're going to say, oh my God, this Radical Candor book was amazing. Why? Because it didn't just make me feel good for a moment. It wasn't Waking the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, which is a great book, by the way, if you apply it. But a lot of people read it for the oddness of it and not necessarily the practical application. Whereas a business book, people are expecting something to improve their business. So be careful if you're going to write a business book. You need to keep this in mind. You need to ask the question very specifically, what problem in their business am I helping them solve? If they read this, are their revenue going to increase? Is their cost of goods sold going to decrease? Is their marketing going to be better? Is their operations going to be more efficient? And therefore, is it payroll? And there's more advanced versions. You could say, like, you could have books on finance and taxes and investing. And there's all sorts of that. I don't want to get, there's many subgenres. But whenever you're thinking about your book, if there's going to be a practical application with which business genre is, and this is, you don't have to write a business book. It's okay. You can write a fantasy fun book. Who cares? You can write whatever you want. But this lesson is about business books. And I'm letting you know that at the end of the rainbow, of a business person reading your business book, if they can't directly know and apply this to their income statement, they're not going to think that it's that great of a book. So now back to this idea of a unique mechanism. So let's say we're doing something about marketing. Let's say it's like a copywriting book for marketing or something. Well, this is going to get kind of meta pretty fast here, but your unique mechanism, you need to name it. So whatever your system is, your thesis, like radical candor as a phrase is a unique mechanism. It's like a shortcut. You're naming the thing. Alex talks about this all the time. He always says nothing exists until you name it. So you say, okay, I'm going to help people improve their marketing. I'm going to help people be better leaders. I'm going to help companies make more money. I'm going to help. Okay. But what type of company? Is it all companies? Is it brick and mortar companies? Is it SaaS companies? Is it fast scaling companies? Is it people who want to start a company but don't have a company yet? Does that make sense? So who's your avatar? Who you're talking to? Because even a big company like an SMB, a small to medium business, like in Wall Street, that's like a $30 million business. It's like an SMB. So to a normal person, a $30 million a year revenue company is like crazy. It's like, how would you ever do that? But to Wall Street and BlackRock and all of those guys, that's not a corporation. That's a pretty good S&P. So are you talking to corporations? If you're talking to corporations, are you talking to executives? Are you talking to middle management? Are you talking to like the inventors of products? Which department are you talking to? Is it HR department? Is it hiring? Is it recruiting? Is it the marketing guys? Is it the coders, the product developers? You see how depending on what problem are you solving for whom, what group, within which industry, and then what's your unique take? And in business, this is your unique value proposition. It's like, I'm local, I'm the most luxurious, I'm the best quality, I'm the fastest, I'm the simplest, I'm the cheapest. There's a million different unique value propositions, right? I'm the only one that owns this thing because I'm the inventor and I own the intellectual property, whatever. But in a business book, the way you want to translate that is to something called a unique mechanism. So you want to essentially name your unique value proposition in the form of a pithy phrase. And often this pithy phrase will be the title of the book. So think about Ryan Holiday, right? Ryan Holiday is just a serial bestseller. And think about all the, like, Courage is Calling. The obstacle is the way. Ego is the end. He has like you can almost tell what the book is about. You can tell what the unique mechanism is by that phrase. Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. The best-selling book of like the last 10 years in nonfiction is Atomic Habits. So think about, do you guys know, essentially it's a book about like, how to change your habits, right? Cool. But the word atomic tells you a lot about it. If anyone's read it, he like one of the unique mechanism that he talks about is he says like make them smaller, right? So it's essentially the same exact thing that Charles Duhigg talked about in The Power of Habit, which was also a bestseller, but not anything close to Atomic Habits because it was a little bit more academic. Charles Duhigg is like a journalist, and he tells stories like kind of in a more academic way. Whereas James Clear in Atomic Habits, it's more accessible and he gives you an out by saying like, hey, you know what? The way to win is really just to like lower the threshold. And like in the morning, instead of going to the gym, why don't you like put on your gym clothes and like do like 10 squats in your living room and then that's it. Like that's a win because you're building a habit that will eventually lead to maybe you going to the gym or going on a run or something like that. But he says like make them smaller. Right? I forget who said it. I think it was maybe Nietzsche or something. He said like people that look for God that don't find him need to look lower. Which it's not to get spiritual, but like it's like you have to look kind of smaller. And this is like the 10,000 hour rule, right? Or like flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi or something like that, right? When I say like you got to go into flow state. Do you guys know what that means? Or like Cal Newport, deep work, or so good they can't ignore you. These are unique mechanisms. The title of the book, Lean Startup by Eric Ries, 0 to 1. Like what is like just think about this. Like 0 to 1. What is that book about? It's Peter Thiel. He was like the first investor in PayPal or on Facebook, but he was also one of the founders of PayPal. But he wrote a book called 0 to 1, and it's for startups who are essentially trying to get product market fit. So they're going from 0 to 1. So like the first step in a business, 0 to 1. Lean Startup by Eric Ries, right? He talks about, what do you think that book is about? Lean Startup. That's the title of the book, Lean Startup. So his whole thing, he kind of invented the concept of like a minimum viable product, right? So the minimum viable product, an MVP, is like what's the first version that you can create that someone would either buy or opt in or just show in any way that you have a little bit of traction. And then you can start getting customer feedback rather than kind of like waiting for it to be this perfect thing. Does that make sense? And so you have to be lean rather than, I want to raise $3 million to build it. It's like, no, put it on your credit card. Spend $20K, put some ads out there, see if anyone wants it. You got to be lean. That's Lean Startup. That's the whole book. It's an amazing book, right? Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman. I'm just listing off like some of the most famous business books, right? The One Thing by Gary Keller. Right? You guys have read that? These are just like really famous business books. But the one Thing by Gary Keller. Like what does he talk about there? It's like focus. Like you got to pick the one thing. Like the whole book is essentially this like one sentence. What is the one thing that if I did it today, it would make everything else in my life easier or unnecessary? That's essentially the entire book. He has that like one sentence. And you see how I say like you could be struggling, like, it's halfway through the day and we say, oh, you got to just focus on the one thing. Like, do you know what I mean? What if I said, okay, this quarter in our business, we're going to just apply like the one thing mentality. What are you saying? Like, how would you apply that? And he talks about a success list of like the 3 most important things. I do this with my company all the time. I'm like my main leaders. I say, okay, here's the one thing for the day. Do this. If you only do this, everything else is good, right? It's a matter of prioritizing essentially, right? Because if you do the wrong thing over and over and over again, then you're going to move really slowly. Whereas if you do the right thing over and over again, then you're going to move really quickly, right? Elon Musk calls it maniacal urgency, right? You want to move with like maniacal urgency. Like Alex loves that phrase. Think of the one thing: 0 to 1, lean startup, blitzscaling, radical candor. The obstacle is the way. Ego is the enemy. Like you feel this. The 5 a.m. club, the power of now. Like even self-development does this. Like the phrase, the title it's like a shortcut to the entire thing. Extreme ownership. That is a unique mechanism. Does this make sense? Okay. So this is Yeah, fail quickly. Like these are all like little pithy one-liners or like proverbs essentially, right? Business proverbs that if you apply them to your business will help your business. In what way? It'll help it in one of these ways. It'll make more revenue, it'll be more efficient, you'll be better at marketing, right? And then at the end of the day, you're going to make more profit, okay? So when you're writing your business book, you got to start with your unique mechanism. You got to start with, okay, what problem am I solving? For whom? How do I do it uniquely? Turn that into a thesis or like a series of like, hey, this is what I'm going to teach people, and then you have to name it. And it has this is like your think of it, this is like your intellectual property. And use the ghostwriters to help you. Use the business ghostwriter. Like, hey, I'm writing a book about blah blah blah. I want to come up with a unique mechanism. I want to name it. It's got to be the title of the book. It's got to be kind of cool. It's like the something effect, the power of blah blah blah, or the lean way, or the culture, like the culture code, like these are famous ways. Does everyone understand this concept? Does everyone get it? Does everyone get it? Okay. So all right, so you have this, and then here's what you're going to do. Okay, here's how you do a business book. So intro is selling why you should read it. Okay, chapter 1 is the problem. Okay. Chapter 2 is the bad solutions. Chapter 3 is your unique mechanism. Okay. Usually this is like a personal example or like how you came up with it. How you came. Chapter 4 is essentially like the unique mechanism in practice. Okay. And then the rest of the book, okay, let me do this. Okay. So this is like part 1. Okay. And then you can either do it 2 ways, okay? So you can either do it where chapter 5 through 8. So there's 2 different ways to do it, okay? So either you have your steps, okay? Your your sub how to, okay? And you put it there. And then at the end you answer objections. So people are like, yeah, but how about this? How about this? And you're like, oh, well, I know, you might be thinking this, but it actually does apply to international. And here's the reason why. Or I know in this situation, you might think it doesn't apply, but it actually does. Okay. So essentially what you want to do is this is how I recommend doing it. So essentially you have kind of like an intro, then you have 2 sections for like the actual how-to steps. And then at the end, you essentially want to answer their objections because that's, you're kind of making a sale in a way. Does this make sense? You're kind of selling them as to why they want to do what they should do. Okay. And here's how every single chapter of a business book is outlined. You have your main story. Okay. You always start with the main story. And then you say, okay, so here's the thesis, right? The lesson of the story. Okay. Then you have the how to section. Then you give another, usually 1 to 3 examples, kind of in quick bursts. Okay. Then you have what's called the nuts and bolts. I should have already said this. So this is the how to is not like step by step. It's more how to is like theoretical. Okay. And then nuts and bolts, if you have like essentially homework, like what's their homework? And then you always want to leave it with some kind of inspiration. There's like, you can do it. And then you say, but there's another problem, which is then the next chapter. That makes sense. So you're like transitioning to the next chapter. So this is the format of every single chapter. Make sense? So you start with a lesson, which is a story. Then you give the thesis of the story. Then you say, okay, well, how are we going to actually apply this, right? And you kind of explain it in like a general way. Then you say, okay, and just to be clear, there's more than just this one story. Let me give you a couple other examples. Then I'll give you some homework, which is more of a how-to. This is exactly step by step what you need to do. And by the way, this might seem kind of difficult, but it's not. You can do it because, so-and-so did it too. And, here's how the emotional aspect of it, like how you can do it. But, now that we solved this one problem, we need to move on to the next step because how are we going to blah, 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 which is the next chapter. Does this make sense? So I told you that this is the easiest one to write, honestly, because essentially all you need to do is you just need to choose the main story for each chapter. So that's you can use a research assistant or any other tool that you want, but choosing this main story is like 90% of the battle. Okay. And so this is how you do this, but like it's the writing part of it, especially with AI and all of these tools, is very easy. The hard part, to be honest, is coming up with a unique mechanism that actually solves a problem in the real world for a specific avatar. Okay. And then to get really advanced, what you want to do at the end of it, okay, is you want to have a website, right? Like a soft CTA, a website. And then the website will have consulting or services or some way that you can do it. And this is where you sell your high ticket. Because if someone read your entire book and they're like, wow, this person is really smart, and like I learned a lot. The problem that they're going to have, right, is now the other problem is time. Okay. So a lot of people will spend money instead of time. They're like, okay, I could learn this, I could apply it, I could do it, or I could just hire you. You could come into my business for a couple months. We could do some consulting calls, or you could speak at my event, or I could just hire your team to do it for me. Or, there's a lot of people in the world that, they're like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather just spend the money. Because you're going to spend money. You're going to spend either time or you're going to spend money. And if you have the money, you should spend the money. If you have the time and you don't have the money, then you don't have a choice. You got to spend the time. But if someone goes through your whole book and they're like, oh my God, yeah, this person actually is really smart about this idea, or like they could really help me in this way. And then you say, by the way, like I do work with some people. You should go to mywebsite.com and sign up, and we can have a chat, and maybe we can work together. And that way, if you sell 100 books and 5 of them become private clients, all of a sudden, you're a pro, which we've talked about this before in different lessons.